Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butts, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network for 10 years. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
Culture and Flavor is a podcast about food and culture centered in Black and Indigenous foodways, hosted by myself, Zella Palmer, right here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Each episode features high vibrational conversations with cultural bearers, chefs, farmers, scholars, barbecue pitmasters, and more. Where there is flavor, there is history. Join me on Culture and Flavor and all of my guests as we share stories that will have you praise dancing, cooking, conjuring, and inspiring your culinary journey.
Nico, tanto tiempo. Welcome to Culture and Flavor.
¿Cómo has estado? ¿Bien?
Todo bien, gracias a Dios.
No. Aguantando todavía.
Aguantando todavía, ya tú sabes. Y'all, I am so excited to talk with Nico Ray today. Nico and I met last year in Sao Paulo, Brazil at the Churrascada Barbecue Festival. And the moment I met him, he was just such a burst of light. And, you know, we had such a great time together and we laughed, we drank, we ate barbecue. We talked all things about Ireland and Jamaica and, of course, New Orleans and just all of his travels. And wherever he goes, he's just always bringing so much beauty, life, and laughter. So I would love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners, Nico.
Jesus, that was quite the introduction there. Hopefully, I can live up to all these expectations now. So, yeah, Nico, I'm from Dublin. Mother's side of the family are Jamaican and father's side probably haven't left Ireland since the Ice Age. Grew up there and spent the guts of 7 years down in the beautiful city that is Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. And now I'm currently living in London. Doing my thing over here, looking out a window at the rain come down on the cloudy London sky.
Wow. I'd love for you to talk about just your childhood and growing up in Ireland and being of mixed heritage and what that was like and just how you came about to, you know, the food world and, you know, so what are some of your food memories as a child?
So it's there was, when I was growing up in the 90s, Ireland didn't have the level of, in the lack of a better word, the diversity, but the immigration was coming in. Ireland really wasn't a strong economic power to attract different people to be coming in and in larger numbers like it does around the world. My father and my mother met in London and moved back to Ireland in 86. So growing up, there wasn't many people, I guess, that looked like me around. But culturally, I've never really identified anything else other than Irish. But there's always just that other thing that heritage that you can't ever deny. I always say to myself, say that I'm, Irish with Jamaican roots and a dual heritage that way. And talking things on the plate, especially because I do cook and I'm a chef, that it's always there's always just been that little bit of spice in me, that need just to get that little bit of flavor that wasn't in homogeneous Irish food. So I grew up kind of mixing those flavors and mixing myself. But with that kind of thing, you're kind of part of the culture. You're very aware that your faces don't match your face doesn't match the faces of the freedom fighters or the people in the Irish and the Irish myths and legends. And for me, there was never any kind of need to throw myself into that, because kind of was aware of where I stood in Irish culture, and that kind of way of like a new face or a new shade of person into the Irish history.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and I think you can speak to a lot of, mixed folks out there from different backgrounds and heritage, especially, in this generation with so many people, intermarrying and, merging cultures. And the Irish and Jamaican are highly spirited people, highly cultural people.
Yeah, two small islands make a big impact on the world.
They do. And I think, it kind of shows who you are, right? And your style of food. At Churrascada, you made some incredible food, and I just want to kind of talk about your food memory and just your journey to kind of like, showcase Irish and Jamaican cuisine.
Yeah. So for me, the idea of the dual heritage starts a lot in, Irish and Jamaican. There's one thing they have in common in modern culture is the idea of the diaspora, and that diaspora cooking. It's always just an echo of something like a whisper that just kind of came before. There's always that kind of certain flavor, the smell, or this like a certain ingredient might have to be changed because it's not found locally. But for me, that kind of cooking started with my grandmother. And when she'd come over to visit Ireland, she'd always come with, a couple of litres of the Scotch bonnet sauce that she always used to make. She'd just make litres and litres and litres of it. And she used to come over to Ireland, and, that stuff lasts for years if you're brave enough to kind of just scrape the end of the bottle after it goes a bit grey. But I would always kind of mix that with the like fresh Irish ingredients and try to find the right balance. And I loved introducing that. And we were talking, early 2000s, 90s. We don't have the same myriad of different kind of restaurants and stuff that we do now. So I was always kind of really interested in bringing those flavors and those spices to different palates, and kind of getting a different eye on it and then moving forward. But then I took those two, the Irish and the Jamaican cooking, down to Argentina, and it became this whole other thing entirely.
Talk to me about Argentina, because as you all noticed in the beginning, we spoke Spanish together. I lived in Cuba for a little bit, and I grew up in Chicago around Puerto Ricans. So, it means that Latino heritage means a lot to me, and my sons are also half Cuban. So, I spend a lot of time in Latin America, and that's something that we have in common, our love, for Latin culture. And I would love for you to talk about, just your time in Argentina and how that shaped who you are. Because how many years did you spend in Argentina?
About 6.5 years, 7 years, almost in and around there.
Okay. And talk to us about the experience of Argentina, because Argentina has a huge, culture, kind of barbecue culture.
Oh, geez. You can't move for it. It's everywhere. It's on the streets, it's on the balconies, it's in the parks, it's just everywhere. It's just about that. You're there. Just one thing that just really attracted to me almost instantly. I arrived, this is back 2011, and it was November time, so it was just the start of spring down there. And the weather was, 27 degrees Celsius, breezy. Everybody was just happy to be out and alive, and it was just this kind of enchanting energy I'd never really experienced before. I was in my early 20s, and I was supposed to be there for 2 months. And after about 3 days, I said to myself, Yeah, I think I might just. Should I live here? And then I know we all get that little temptation when you go to a new place and you kick your legs back, and the cocktails are nicely chilled and the shade, and you kind of just get enchanted in it, and that instantly happened to me. And then I went home for a bit, got a bit of money together, and then moved back permanently 2012. But it was it was just something about the pace of life there that just I hadn't really seen before, because everybody, it's the common culture, which I think every culture should just instill in some way, just kind of nap in the middle of the day, and then you have a whole new day to linger into the night with on a dinner table that's like everybody's sitting there for 5 hours, just drinking wine, shooting the breeze, and just enjoying the fact that they're with each other.
Nice. Yeah, that's a beautiful culture. They do that in lots of Latin American cultures, Mexico included. I mean, I just remember being a little girl, and I was living in Mexico for a little bit when my dad was working there, and I remember everything was shut down. And as a kid, you're like, "Why is everything shutting down? I want to play some more."
So everybody's snoozing. I still do it today. A nap after lunch or before dinner is the sweetest song your soul can sing.
The sweetest thing ever. I want to talk about your grandmother too, because you all on your Instagram page, there's this amazing video of your grandmother, just giving you feedback on some dishes that you made.
Yeah.
It made me laugh.
Yeah.
All grandmothers have that, you need a little bit more.
It's just a pinch of this, it's a pinch of that. It's never written down. You're always just trying to replicate it. I mean, there's also the flavour of nostalgia that you're never ever going to be able to replicate. But yeah, that was for a series I filmed last year. We filmed a series about easy to follow barbecue recipes, and she was in one of the episodes showing me how to make the sauce, and I think it was the only part of the whole shoot we did that actually just wasn't scripted. But when you're doing those shows, you're repeating lines, or you're waiting for the camera crew to get there to get the right focus. So you're kind of stopping and starting. But that was just a nice, easy flow, and to do something like that with her and have it immortalized in that way is just something I will never ever regret or forget.
Of course. Now, have you spent time in Jamaica? Do you get to go there often?
We're all here. I'm due a trip in October. I'm going to go down in October time. But that side of my family, they're all here over in London because, again, when talking about these diaspora, like the diaspora cooking and stuff, which is interesting enough. With the Irish and Jamaican, I always kind of revert back to, there's a kind of I think a misconception we have in history with these kind of things of these kind of migrations and trades that they didn't happen before, but they just happened at a slower pace. Like, there's a figure I've read, and it's 25% of Jamaicans are ethnically Irish, and there's a slang for Gansey, which is the Irish word for jumper. So there's all these kind of relics, and it's interesting when these kind of relics and things come back to the other world. And the Jamaican cooking here, you could go down to South London, down to Brixton, and it's just going to be all Jamaicans, and so that kind of stuff just kind of keeps you motivated as well when the rain starts to fall and you're not in a Palm Beach.
Because if I'm not mistaken, there were Irish, kind of indentured servants sent to Jamaica. Am I correct?
You're very correct. So that was before. You can probably know more than me, but from my understanding, there was a big rebellion in Ireland in the 16th century, and by one of the most hated men in Irish history, known as Oliver Cromwell, killed tens and thousands of people. But he cleared out a whole area of Ireland, and his refrain or his tagline was either to hell or Barbados. So just death or you're getting on the boat. And it was before the time of when the sugarcane wool, before it became really popular. The Irish were sent down there, and the Irish being Irish, they didn't last too long in the sun, or the malaria killed them off. So that was the interesting mixture of culture. And that's the kind of one of those things of these relics of time. There's an island there that's called Montserrat, and it's the only other island in the world that celebrates St. Patrick's Day as its national holiday. There's Kellys, O'Rourke's, there's O'Brien's, but they still have that the West African features to them.
Fascinating. And I know that you do a lot of festivals as well in Europe. Can you talk about just some of your experiences in doing festivals and in Europe, because we're in the States and, we have a lot of chefs that, participate in festivals. This weekend in New Orleans is our jazz festival. So, for some of our chefs here, they do it like they've been doing it for 20, 25 years. And you're welcome to come to New Orleans anytime.
Oh, girl, I'm going to hit you up. I'm going to arrive with my suitcase and I'm going to be there.
Yes,
I know, I do. I know. I keep saying it to myself. God,
yes,
it's a place I need to see.
You have to come. No, but back to the festivals, I'm just curious. So I know, you were at Churrascada. Was that your first time at Churrascada?
That was my first time in Brazil, funnily enough, even though living down there for that long, I never made it that further north.
Wow. And what were some of your impressions, just, in comparison, not comparing any festivals in Europe, but just what were your takeaways and just what they're doing in Brazil as far as the culinary scene?
In comparison, I ate well. We were there for 4 days, ate well. Had to barely fit on the plane. Had to pay the extra baggage for my belly. God, like instantly went. Yeah, it was. It's hard to be just surprised when you have no expectations. So you kind of go into there with an open mind. But I knew Brazil was obviously famed for its meat. I think the Argentine style is better than what I saw down there. That's just kind of my being biased, I guess. But Jesus Christ, there's some stuff I hadn't seen down there ever. Like, remember that there was that like cage thing? It looked like a big Madonna video. There was things hanging out of it and people around it just kind of just marveling at it. It looked like a World's Fair or something. And the wheels, and it was
Gustavo. I interviewed Gustavo, and he, I told him that he had the Willy Wonka barbecue festival, and he had a big laugh off of that.
Yeah, it was just like a big adult playground or what it was. Everybody just walking around drinking beer. The Brazilians like a good drink, but there's some stuff that I would. There's some stuff in your life that you never even put it on a list because you don't know it existed. Some of the indigenous cooking we saw down there, the passion for it is great to see, and that's the thing with those circuits. And when you kind of keep meeting the same people over and over again, there's always going to be something you're just going to say, geez, I wouldn't even know to ask Google that question. You find these little snippets of information just through. It could be sitting down having a beer with someone, or just a 3 minute polite conversation. But they're always a good time, and I think it's one of those things you don't really get called back if you don't do a good job.
Talking about indigenous culture, I remember seeing some gauchos perform, and I'm sure you saw a lot of that in Argentina. Can you, talk a little bit about that culture?
The gaucho culture. I don't want to give you any expert opinions on it, but from what I see, it was a pride that you can recognize in a lot of different cultures around the world, and it was a pride of and very simplistic and basic things, that there was no real materialism to it. It was just the horses and the barbecue, the asado, the meat, and it's just one of those kind of romantic notions of sitting under the stars with your horses waiting for your meal to cook is one of those one of those images that if I had the time or the placement, I'd like to put myself in. But those kind of things permeate through the rest of society as well. That kind of that respect of what you're doing and how to do it right. Because I think especially with the gauchos, they're the kind of the gold standard of making these kind of dishes or making these kind of events, and everybody can draw inspiration from what they, because as a society starts to contemporize, you move away from, start to move more into convenience and start moving away from those kind of core ideals. So yeah, it's really cool to see. I mean, it's almost like a, it's when you're in this kind of city, you always feel like the the tourist with the map out, and you're like, oh my god, there's an actual gaucho kind of thing. You're kind of like, no, it's just a person cooking meat, But it's when you're going into these kind of things, it's hard not to feel like that. It's I think it's just one of those harmless things, but it's it's always great to see those things in person.
So
that true authenticity.
Absolutely.
As much as I hate to use that word, but
no, but it's real. I mean, in comparison to our food systems in the U.S., where a lot of our food is, genetically modified and, just part of this kind of, globalized, processed, system, for us, it's very refreshing. Even going to Europe and, seeing a place like Ireland is super lush, and and like you said, how you try to merge your herbs, Irish herbs, and and just things from the land and your food is, I think, what fascinates us, because we want that again, I believe.
Yeah, in this aspect of Ireland, it's interesting because again, another word I don't want to use, but it's because it's not a renaissance. It's a renaissance would imply a rebirth. It's what's happening in Irish food at the moment is because with Irish history, after the Great Hunger in the mid 19th century, half the population either starved or had to leave. So food culture wasn't really. It wasn't really. There was no progression from then, and a lot of Irish culture is poverty and terrible cataclysmic incidences of whether it be the driving out of the British or famines or plagues and things like that. So what we're having now is a lot of Irish people have realized, in the last 30, 40 years, that we've got this magnificent island where there's 50 shades of green in every corner in the countryside, and we're an island, but people are just starting to but become more interested or intrigued of the maritime culture that, again, was stunted by colonial rule. So people are starting to rediscover the things that were lost to them.
So name some of your favorite Irish dishes.
Some of my favorite Irish dishes, I mean, let's start from the start. It's a good, solid breakfast, like an Irish breakfast on a Sunday at around 11:30, when you've had more than your fill of pints the night before, and there's the sausage, the bacon, the white pudding, the black pudding, which the white pudding, the black pudding, they separated from the English fry, which doesn't have those two things. You know what the pudding is, yeah?
Yeah. Could you explain to our listeners who aren't familiar?
Yeah, so pudding comes from it. It's a kind of, if you've heard of haggis, it's kind of a variation that a lot of Scottish culture is based on Irish culture, but it's sheep blood and fat mixed with usually oats or barley, and then encased in like a sausage intestine and boiled. But then you fry it again, and it just tastes absolutely delicious. Well, to me anyway. and then the bacon and the eggs, and then one of my favorite things I always come home is just a big fried fish and chips. Is something that's always going to have a close affinity to my heart. Nice fresh cod, smothered in salt and vinegar, and a big bowl of chips.
That sounds yummy. I
Yeah,
love fish and chips.
it
Yum.
always, it's just something like this. It's one of those things you eat them and it's like, oh, fish and chips together at last, for God. It took what, 300,000 years of human evolution to arrive at fish and chips. Fucking, I'm glad I live at that time. It's unreal. And then things like, I mean, the stews. There's a Dublin dish called coddle, which would be like boiled sausages and boiled potatoes and boiled vegetables and things like that. But a lot of our Irish cooking traditionally is peasant food. But what we do have in abundance is the proximity of the farm to your fork is unlike anywhere. Unlike many nations in the world, in some shops they have the addresses of the farmers that where the food is coming from, and that would be in like the the convenience stores. So there's and great dairy products from all that green grass we have. Just are like mussels, some fresh mussels with some mustard seeds soaked in stout, mixed with some fried butter and some shallots. Just that, a pint of Guinness, and you'd be happy.
I'm glad that you mentioned Guinness. Talk to us a little bit about beer culture in Ireland.
Yeah, so there's a thing with Guinness, right? I am not convinced people drink Guinness to get drunk. People just, I mean, getting drunk is eventually going to be the outcome. But because again, a lot of Irish culture is based around kind of sitting down and having a few drinks and maybe a song, and the guitar comes out and then the fiddles come out, and the next thing you know, there's 9 people on the table dancing, and then everybody's clapping and singing, and it's an all round, it's a blast. But but yeah, I mean, there's definitely the drinking culture with Guinness. I remember when I was a kid, working in the bars and stuff, that, if you pour a Guinness wrong, someone's not going to drink it.
Wait, you were working at a bar when you were a kid?
I say kid, 16, 17.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's not like a Charles Dickens novel.
I was thinking of little Nico, like serving Guinness.
Yeah. I say kid, about 16, 17. But, you're pouring a pint of Guinness, and, if you don't get the head right, if you don't get the settle right, someone's not going to take it off, because there's so many different subtle variations in that drink that, I mean, there's one class of people say it doesn't matter. There's another class of people that will say it absolutely matters. For example, I actually don't drink it in this city, in London, because it usually just comes out a bit shite. And it always just goes back to that. There's a saying, like, the pint of plain is your only man. But again, there's the dark side of Irish culture of, like, there's an expression. I was having a conversation with a friend recently, and to say someone is an alcoholic, like, I mean, an alcoholic, the term in Irish culture was, he is fond of the drink. And it just puts such a lightness on something that can be so devastating. Oh yeah, he's fond of the drink. And the question was, it was popular saying back in like 70s, 80s, I presume, back to when people started talking to each other. But my question always was, like, how fond does someone have to be on the drink in Ireland to be deemed an alcoholic? Like, what's every country's got that cultural relativism to it of.
Right. I mean, but I think because the Irish are so poetic. I mean, I really believe that you all are poets, and in the way that you use language. The Scottish are very, similar in that way as well. So yeah, I'm sure that saying just came out of poetry.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because my father now would speak, and his grandfather would have spoken kind of in direct translations of Irish, in English, but in direct translations of Irish. Like, to say in Irish, when you'd say hello to someone, you'd say "Conasatatu," which now would translate as "How are you?" Conasatatu, but the direct translation would be "What way are you?" And so he what way are you? And there's no, in English, you are hungry. In Spanish, tengo hambre, like I have hunger. In Irish, you'd say tá ocras orm, which means hunger is on me. And it starts to get more dramatic because tá ocras an dam orm, in English translation, be I'm very hungry, but in the Irish translation directly would be the hunger of the world is upon me.
Wow.
But I was looking. It's funny you mentioned that because of this. Like again, we talk about these things embedded in different culture. Because I've always been fascinated about these different parts of culture that. Also, let me start it this way. There's the discovery of the New World, all the different foods that started coming to Europe, and some of them took hundreds of centuries to get there, or in different cultures might have adapted them. Obviously, with Ireland, it's the potato, but that is about 300 years of history, and it becomes the most dominant thing in Irish in culture. You say to anyone on the street, name 3 things about Ireland, someone's going to say potato. And I'm interested. I was just looking like, what's that 20-year period in Irish history where that was introduced? What was happening there? And we go back to the language, like the expression "you dig."
Yeah, absolutely. They say that in New Orleans, actually.
Yeah, that comes from the Irish "ní higamdum," which means "I don't understand you." And then it's, I think, as far as I read, it came out of places like New York, where Black Americans and Irish started mixing in, the lower caste neighborhoods, and the Irish would be like, "Ní higamdum, I don't understand." And like, "Oh, you dig?" And it kind of comes through that. And holy cow comes from holy cahu, which is kind of just explicative. And then gee whiz comes from gia us, which means like noble father.
Now, see, when you said holy cow, that kind of brought back memories of me growing up in Chicago, because, Harry Carey, the Cubs, he always had holy cow. He would always say holy cow. There's also, like, by the House of Blues, a big bar that's dedicated to him. And Chicago has such a huge Irish population. And I just have fond memories of my dad's best friend, John Casey, and literally in their home, they have a picture of his best friend, John Casey, meeting with the Pope. And that was like the biggest moment of his life. And I just remember him.
That's a gold star for any Catholic. Like
that's a gold star.
That's like a Kardashian for a 12-year-old.
Right. Listen. And I mean, I just remember him just, drinking, stout in the living room and just talking about that moment, and I'm sure for him as an Irish Catholic from Chicago, that was, just generations waiting for that moment.
Oh, that's the last tick on the box. Like your bird sighting or something. You're bird watching.
Right. And even here in New Orleans, I know that you said, you dig comes from New York, but, we also had an Irish, Irish population here as well. We have the Irish Channel, they built the bridges, a lot of Irish, were here at one time, and Sicilians, so and living in neighborhoods in proximity to African Americans, of course, those cultures would, influence each other.
Yeah. And it's just that's always just interests me, like those 20 years or a generation where afterwards someone just says, "No, but we've always done this." And it's kind of those whispers of the past, just kind of, you don't really know why you do it, but you just do it because, culture not dictates, that's too much of a powerful word, but, the culture almost nurtures it in you.
Right. Well, we're going to be back in a few minutes. We have to thank our advertisers, and we're going to talk to Nico more about his life in London and some of the media projects that he's worked on and the ones that he's working on right now in London. So we'll be back on Culture and Flavor. Thanks for joining us. I'm just going to give a second. Let me take a swig of water.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network for 10 years. Roberta's was founded in Bushwick in 2008 and has become one of the most iconic restaurants in the country. HRN made its home inside of Roberta's in 2009, and together they have become part of the DIY fabric of the neighborhood. Roberta's, the pizza restaurant, is open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week and serves much more than just the famous wood-fired pizzas. Their team dreams up new salads, pastas, and sandwiches on the regular. Roberta's Tiki Bar is alive and well in the back garden, serving up frozen drinks in the summer and hot toddies in the winter. Stop by the bakery and takeout spot next door for fresh breads, sticky buns, and pizzas to go. But Roberta's also extends beyond Bushwick, with multiple locations in New York City and now in Los Angeles. You can also find their frozen pies in grocery stores around the country. The spirit of Roberta's, like Heritage Radio Network, is everywhere. Here's to many more years of pizza-powered radio. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
So we're back with Nico, and I would love to talk to you about your life in London and just, some of the media projects that you're working on, because you are some of your social media posts on Instagram, share some of the things that you've done as well as what you're doing now. Why did you move to London? I mean, London, as we know, is just such a cosmopolitan city, and the world is in London. For our listeners who might not know, but it's always been a very diverse, place. But talk to us about, what you're doing in London.
So I moved over. First of all, it's a city I avoided and hated with a lot of my soul for many, many years. It was too big. It was full of people. But when I moved over here, I think I moved over here kind of at the end of when the restrictions started lifting, and I kind of saw it through a different light. And it's just one of those cities you can do anything you want to feed your soul, or bring your sins together in a short amount of time. But what I've just loved about it is there's a couple of things I just love about it. Every inch of this space is being used for something, and there's a kind of a playground for creativity. Everybody's just really enthusiastic in this city, and I kind of something I've met a lot of Londoners in my life, and there's always just this great enthusiasm to them about to kind of just get something done and do it. That's kind of why I stayed, and actually it's working out cheaper to live here than in Dublin at the moment. Dublin's got quite expensive.
Really?
Yeah. So I kind of just said I'd give it a couple of years to see how I felt about it. And I've got family here. It's a short flight to Dublin, and I'm trying at the moment to kind of replicate the trajectory that I went in Ireland with the cooking and the media stuff I've been doing over the last couple of years. Because this all kind of really happened during the lockdowns, restrictions. I got into the media stuff. I was days away from signing the loan to take out to set up a restaurant in Dublin. And this is like the 10th of March 2020. Then someone decided to eat a bat, and we all sat down for 2 years. And I moved over then I kind of got out of that, and then, I was on like everyone else, there's a plethora of different stories out there. The first time everybody was in the exact same situation but I started doing the media stuff, and I was kind of the mindset of listen, what else am I going to do? I'll just guess I'll started getting these offers, and one thing led to two things led to three, and then I've kind of left at the thing. I was on that show, Fuck That's Delicious, with Action Bronson.
I saw that. That was so cool.
Yeah, so that was just a random message the restaurant was featured, fortunately, on his show on season 4. And that was just a random message one Thursday. I was doing the pop-up restaurants. I do a pop-up restaurant for like 3 months, and then because I was doing a lot by myself, I'd kind of get burnt out, and they hit me up and said, we do this show. And I said, that sounds great. And we filmed it. And then it came out, and then one producer saw it. I did one thing led to two things led to four. And then before I really knew it or kind of had any strategy of how to approach it, I it was kind of taking up most of my time. And I just actually last week finished up a second series of a barbecue show.
Nice.
It was great. So season 2, it's nice to know somebody believes in you.
Yeah.
It's even though when you don't believe in yourself, these kind of things, there's a production team behind you, and everybody's there for the same job.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's a kind of a matter of I kind of just need to get back into the cooking now, because I think there's a whole cohort of people that might just have seen me on maybe a glimpse or on the television or maybe on social media that actually forget that I can actually do some cooking as well. And I'm actually starting to forget it. I haven't done it that much in the last little while.
I believe that you have a great skill, and your personality, you definitely have. It just jumps off the screen, as well as just in person.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I do believe you speak to a lot of mixed heritage folks out there, who are and travelers, right? Because you travel a lot, and just you being able to take a little piece of something with you, when you leave it, right? But it's always there for you. So, I would love for you to maybe just talk about, the London scene as well. Maybe just, I know you talked about it being a scene in a city that is open to creatives. I've heard that before. I haven't been in London in a minute. But I do have a friend who was just there, and she's an artist, and she was talking just about how supported she felt as a creative, and that they do have that spirit of, let's get it done. Like, what do you need? Which is, what all creatives need. Right. So,
exactly,
and London is full of markets and cultures and Nigerian, Jamaican, everything.
Yeah, they're like the nearest market to myself there. I tried to get there in the morning. This type of place. Like most of the city is cashless, but it's the only those markets you just get the you're still paying in pounds and everything else, but. Yeah, it's just got that. You could just walked into a random area, and then it's just like I lived on the street there, and it was all Cypriot Turks. So it was just like Cypriot Turkish restaurants, and then you walk a few minutes down the road, and then it was just all Filipino restaurants, and everybody kind of sharing these little areas together, and you go down to the markets, and it's Jamaicans, Nigerians, Ghana, Pakistani, Indian. English, all just kind of there selling their wares, and that's to me that's what Britain is. Maybe definitely not Englishness, but Britain is that kind of, because a lot of these people, their parents might have come from when these were all part of the British Empire. They would have considered themselves British, So that there's like those are the kind of cultural legacies that still live on here. I mean, and then you think like the vindaloo was invented in I think it was in Glasgow, and
I think so.
Again, and then it's like like you're constantly just licking the cultural melting pot.
And so I know that they've been working. Some chefs out there. Gordon Ramsay, other top chefs, in the UK have been working to kind of revitalize English, cuisine. But I'm curious, about the festivals, because I think you were is it Meat Stock Festival that's out in London?
Meatopia.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that festival.
Yeah, it's a great location. It's in East London, where a lot of the old docks were. So it's in an area where they used to bring all the tobacco in, they call it the tobacco dock. And that was my first time. I did it 2 years ago. This was my first time doing it. And yeah, it was the first time I actually did anything in London. And you're new kid on the block. You kind of want to make the good impression. You had me outside. Remember, it was a nice, beautiful day. I cooked jerk lamb with like a Caribbean style slaw, and that was good. Smoked it, and then seared it. Keep it nice and juicy and moist. But they do their best to kind of keep everything. So they don't want to call themselves a barbecue festival. They're more of kind of the open fire kind of festival. So it carries a similar connotation, but it's the kind of same, but a little bit different. So there was all sorts of stuff there. Where there was, a guy from Birmingham that does spent a lot of time in Mexico, and he does these kind of tacos, and then English Filipino or Anglo Jamaicans or Anglo Turks, and it's like any festival in the world. You walk around and you walk in and you roll out.
So I can hear, in my head, I have a colleague that's a Jamaican professor, and I can hear in my head, wait a minute, you forgot to ask him about, your favorite Jamaican dishes. So I want to make sure I ask that, because I asked you what your favorite Irish dishes are.
It's the patty. Like, it's just one of the most faithful things you could ever eat. It's just always there for you. It's just my grandmother, when she used to come over, is one of those dishes that always used to stick with me. She used to make them, and then she just used to roll them out, and then I could put them in the freezer when she left, and then it'd just be the constant taste of the minced beef patties that your grandma makes. And you walk around the city, and there's parts of them where they're everywhere. And I'd say one is a snack, maybe two is a meal.
You're making me hungry. I might have some Jamaican food tonight. Jamaican, yes, those patties, they come in, like they say here, they come in the clutch.
Crispy, buttery, and then the spice hits you while the steam is still going up your nose. It's a beautiful sight.
And I think I remember, I'm not sure if you told me this, but I want to make sure, did you told me that you lived in Los Angeles for a minute, or you were visiting Los Angeles?
I visited Los Angeles. I was in the US recently, actually. I was in Boston. I got myself over to Boston. Yeah, I filmed a travel show over in Boston at the start of the summer, or start of the winter.
Okay.
And that was a city that really took me by surprise. Again, I had no expectation. That's a nice, pretty city. I like that city.
Yeah, Boston is nice. My sister used to live in Boston. Boston is really nice. Obviously, a huge Irish population there, and culture. I mean, the majority of Irish Americans moved to Boston and New York. So, and their culture is strong there.
Yeah, it's interesting. My impression of it was again, going back to the diaspora conversations, the Irish that moved there, and because we get a lot of Irish Americans that have traced their lineage back to my father's side of the family, and it's interesting because we talk about these different, like, Irish American culture is very different to Irish culture because it's based on, and I saw this a lot in Buenos Aires, because that city is just, even when it was built to be nostalgic. You walk through it and parts of it look like Madrid, parts of it look like England, or London, parts of it look like Paris. Even when it was built to be nostalgic. But when you're talking to Boston, it was, when people were moving over there, their image or their culture is based on what Irish culture was 100 years ago, and it's gone on that divergence. So it's interesting to kind of see when those two things meet again, what actually happens. People have the two different accents of the same thing, of the same voice.
Yeah, and I think it's, how people in the diaspora, who are descendants, keep it alive, right? Every year in Chicago, they put a green dye on St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, I've seen that. They did that. They did that in Dublin once, and I don't know how they messed it up. The dye ended up staying there, and it just turned, like, it didn't really move, and like weeks later it turned this like vomit like green, or like this vomit like sludgy green.
Oh no! Ew.
But if there's one piece of advice I could ever give to anybody going to Ireland, on St. Patrick's Day is do not go to Dublin. You won't have a good time. Get yourself down to a smaller city or one of the smaller towns.
I mean, and maybe you have some travel tips for us since you travel a lot and you did that travel show. Could you give us some travel tips or places that you consider, as your top favorite places to travel to?
In Europe or Ireland or
wherever?
Well, let's start with what I know. If you're going to Ireland, obviously you fly in, but listen, you can see most of it in a day and a bit. But if you get yourself if you have the luxury of going out to the west of the country or down to the south coast, every image or postcard or romantic notion you have about the country, you will see with your own eyes. Just cliffs that go on and sprawl and touched by the rays out of the breaking clouds, and fresh food, friendly faces. Everyone's always down to hear your story and what you're doing. And that was one of those things I always find when I go to the US, that it's quite normal in Irish culture just to have a chat with someone, just go, oh, how you going? Oh, too bad. And you have it's not that off pitched to just to talk to someone. I find that kind of find it here. It's not so much, but then kind of break the English down in their stiffness. Don't be afraid. Never be afraid to talk to someone in Ireland, because everyone's gonna listen to you. They'll give you the benefit of the doubt first until you give them a reason. But some of my favorite places in Europe, I have I really like cities in Portugal, like Porto or Lisbon are fantastic cities. Great food, small enough to walk around in a day. You don't have too much traveling. Small country. And Amsterdam is another favorite one of my cities. I could see myself living there. And I don't know, the next decade I'd give it a little shot. And yeah, there's always the south of Italy as well. Just those small little hamlets with fresh pasta and stunning, beautiful populations. How everyone gets anything done. I guess they don't. Just kind of sitting around eating pasta all day.
Oh man, I was at I took my students to Slow Food International at Turin, Italy, in September, and it was just unbelievably gorgeous, and just the food. I mean, it was incredible,
Funny enough, I don't think pasta or Italian food would be in my top 5 of like.
No,
like I mean, no. I love a good lasagna like any man, but
sure. I mean, some of it, I guess it depends on the restaurants that you go to, right? And the chefs that prepare it. I think we were there for a special occasion. So I can't, judge all Italian food, but I understand what you mean, if it's not top of your 5. So what is your top 5, I should ask?
Barbecue and the art, just have a love it, but it's funny. I'm not too well versed on like American style,
Sure.
Like Texas. I had a friend from Texas. He showed me a few things, but then Argentine style. I love Peruvian food so much.
Yes.
Mexican.
Have you been to Peru?
No, I'm trying to get I lived in a Peruvian neighborhood in Buenos Aires where I kind of was, again, we're like, where's this been all my life? Why didn't no one tell me this existed? Right. Because that's such a fascinating cuisine that it's, it's had a lick of all these different cultures. Like ceviche, I think, has only been there since the 50s after the Second World War, when Japanese moved over there. It's again one of those things where you're just like, oh, this is Peruvian now.
And the link between potatoes and potatoes, Peru and Ireland is huge.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's just because it's funny how it works. And then I was having this conversation today. It's like the potato comes from Peru, then all the Italian or all the chip shops that would sell the fish and chips in Ireland are actually Italian. They were originally brought over by the Italians. So all these like cultural mixes, and then some of those families have been there for 100 years, and they're all still, they've got their they've got their namesakes there, the local chip shops.
So you said, okay, let's back up. So you said that the first one was Peru,
Peru,
another
it'd be the Mexican,
okay.
Indian.
Have you been to Mexico? I should ask
I'm
you.
actually going in October.
Nice. What part?
Yeah. I'm actually doing a friend's wedding down,
Cool.
doing the ceremony. Yeah. It's down near, oh geez, I should know by now. Down like by kind of Belize, that direction.
Okay. Mexico is
Vast.
so beautiful, so vast. I mean, the diversity is incredible. I was little, I lived there when my dad was working there, and we lived in Guadalajara, Tlaquepaque, a small neighborhood called Tlaquepaque. We lived in Guanajuato. We went all over Mexico because he was there. At the time, the ex-president of Echeverria was trying to work on bringing more education around the African presence in Mexico.
Okay.
And so it was, I just remember, growing up in Chicago, I have a huge Mexican American neighborhood, and, not just neighborhood, but, citizens of Chicago. I mean, Mexican American culture is everywhere. It's part of our food memory, to eat that. Everybody eats tacos, everybody. But then going to Mexico and seeing the diversity of their cuisine just always made me fall in love with Mexican culture even more. And I think you're going to really, 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 really love it. And hopefully you'll get to spend some time and really travel throughout the country, because it is so vast and so amazing,
Any recommendations for me then?
Let me see. It's so much. I mean, definitely need to go to Mexico City. Mexico City is definitely, a place of paradise of food, and there's just so many different cultures there. Guanajuato. I'm sure, some of our listeners will hopefully reach out to you.
Yeah, I'm going to get fat.
Tell you all places to go,
Fatten myself up like a winter goose.
Yeah, right. The Yucatan, is bustling now. I mean, a lot of, tourists are going there, but if you can, work on finding places where you can find indigenous cuisine, and also really try their food, Mayans, all of the cultures that are there. I think you would really, really, really enjoy it.
No, I'm sure I will.
Yeah. Okay. So we did Peru, Mexico, and what's next?
I love Indian food.
Love Indian food.
But always smash a good curry. Like, just, it's anything, just all those different flavors and spices.
Love Indian food, and it's so much more than just butter chicken.
Yeah. No, there's plenty of it, and it's I'm not too hard pressed to find it near me here.
Of course, you're in London. And then okay, so the fourth one.
Well, that's fourth: Peruvian, Argentine, Mexican,
Argentine.
Italian.
I forgot Argentine. Okay.
Yeah, and like Portuguese food, it's just not that varied. Spanish, but then I'd have to go to like just a solid Thai or Southeast Asian cuisine is always a winner.
Yeah, Thai food is amazing. And I mean, it kind of complements just, who you are, the spices that you love. I think it's maybe perhaps you always searching for your Jamaican heritage.
Yeah, I know. I always like to, ask when I'm eating something, ask myself, what is that? Like that little question.
Right. What is that?
Yeah.
I think, maybe the food that you love is, maybe has to do with maybe you also, just connecting back to your own palate, being Jamaican as well, wanting that spice.
Exactly. Yeah. There's always just something missing.
Well, what can we expect from you in the near future? What are you excited about, or what would you love to do in the food world next?
Right now, I'm in a kind of position where I've been doing, not through any sort of, I've been doing other people's projects. Not that it's a bad thing. It's going to be around professionals that kind of not demand, but get that excellence out of you that they're kind of, because I feel like a lot of my life I don't actually I don't do that too much, but I need to start kind of branching out and doing my own things, and definitely with the kind of media stuff. So hopefully a YouTube channel in the next couple of months, and
Nice.
I'll be doing a lot of cooking this year around Ireland, the UK, and then hopefully at the end of the year in some different locations around the world. But yeah, just still in one of those modes. I'm just still figuring it out.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll figure it out. We're not worried about it. We're excited to see what Nico Ray does next. And we want you to, for people to follow you. Where can they follow you on Instagram or
on
social
Instagram,
media pages?
Yeah, it's Nico Reynolds. It's Nico de Ray. And then I'm always kind of on that. And my restaurant is called Lil Porty. Lilportie. Pretty inactive at the moment, but I'll be getting back up. And if anyone's close by, yeah, hit me up.
Love it. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias.
Absolute pleasure. De nada. Todo tu show.
Ay, gracias,
No,
mi
por
vida.
favor,
Cuídate. Cuídate mucho y para adelante como un elefante, ya tú sabes. We'll see each other soon.
Hopefully.
Absolutely. Si Dios quiere. Ciao. Thank you for joining Culture and Flavor with Zella Palmer. We look forward to many more episodes with some amazing guests. So thank you for listening, and make sure you hit the subscribe button.
Culture and Flavor is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.